Welcome to the Joy Lab podcast, where we help you uncover and foster your most joyful self. Your hosts, Dr. Henry Emmons and Dr. Aimee bring you the ideal mix of soulful and scientifically sound tools to spark your joy, even when it feels dark. When you're ready to experiment with more joy, combine this podcast with the full Joy Lab program over at joylab.coach.
Hello, I'm Henry Emmons.
And I'm Aimee Presek. So we have a little bit of a different episode for you today. And actually, we'll be doing more of these, sort of adding shorter episodes during the month that kind of take our element of joy that we're working on and kind of hold it next to something really specific that's happening in the world or that we're hearing from members of our Joy Lab community. Things that are on our heart. And, we're doing this because I feel it. Sometimes it's hard to believe that joy and these other elements can kind of stand up to the darkness that we're feeling or experiencing or witnessing in our world. Sometimes just to put these elements up against the sort of daily ways of being and scenarios and experiences that we face daily. I want to note as well, we're not pretending that we have any answers. I am not a expert in things like disaster response. And right now, the Uvalde mass shooting just happened really recently, like a week after the Buffalo grocery store mass shooting. This is amidst the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. It's amidst the painful milestone of, 1 million plus of our fellow Americans dying of COVID. This is heavy to hold, and we don't have really clear answers. And this first episode is coming amidst our element of curiosity. So I think in that vein, it's maybe a good fit as we join together and make space for conversation around some tough stuff, but also around our elements of joy. So, Henry, I think I want to start off by asking you, as we're in this space, we trust these elements of joy, that they're here for us, but how can we sort of hold them alongside all of this anger that we might be feeling or this sadness or fear?
Yeah. Well, I want to echo what you said, Aimee, that we're not pretending to come with the answers to this. We just felt really strongly that we wanted to say something and respond. And, really, we're just hoping to speak from the heart and say what seems real to us about this and hope that it is helpful in some way to our listeners. So I think it's a really legitimate question. How does something like joy or curiosity or loving kindness or compassion, how do those things live right beside something as horrific as this shooting? And so many shootings and just so much, I think there's so much fear and a sense that things are kind of falling apart. That's what I hear, and that's sometimes what I feel even. Yeah. And yet, it's our great endeavor with Joy Lab is to see what's real, to face these kind of things and still be able to practice and create these upward spirals that we talk about. So how do we do that in this context? That's kind of the question we're trying to wrestle with. And I think that I guess I want to say something about how to experience and use some of the emotions that are happening and they're very, very real. And I think that it's in some ways such a clear and great example for what we've talked about so many times, that we don't want to deny or push away or push down these what we consider unpleasant feelings, particularly the kind that arise with something like this, because they are real, they are genuine, authentic responses to something like this, which is very much fits with the sense that life is also beautiful and joyful at the same time. I want to, I guess, just kind of start by saying that whatever it is you are experiencing as an emotion to this, try to honor it, try to let it be there, try to sit with it for a little bit, without coming to a premature conclusion or just saying there's nothing I can do, so you kind of set it aside. Mm-hmm. And I actually, I want to use as an example, Aimee, something that you did just yesterday in response to this. You sent an email out to me and others of us who work with Joy Lab and Natural Mental Health, just saying that you were really feeling a lot of stuff in response to this, and you wanted to do something specific about it. So I want to ask you, Aimee, if you can share a little bit about what has been your emotional response to this.
Yeah. I think my response has been a roller coaster that has moved between just like, this world is a dumpster fire and there's just no point, and hope and sorrow and like the most fierce anger I've felt in a while. And my body, has felt those dynamics as well, lethargy. I feel exhausted. And then at the same time, I just want to take action and not stop until something shifts. And so I think that's what makes it sometimes so difficult, is when in a situation like this, and amidst all of what we've been facing as a global community, particularly in the last several years, is that it's almost like there's just so many emotions cycling that paralysis is easy to settle into. And we talk about this actually in our next episode with uncertainty tolerance. And there's something there that, is really ripe, I think, as well, when all of these things are cycling and a clear resolution or solution and answer doesn't seem really present. Or, reflecting on mass shootings, we haven't had any meaningful action. And so, you can cycle into that apathy. That's understandable. And so, I don't know, I think what's so important for me is that this realization that I don't need to feel happy all the time, and that's hard when you're coming from depression or anxiety, to feel like, God, I need to get out of this. And the only way to get out of this is to feel the opposite of it. But to learn that that's not the case, to get more curious about my inner architecture, my emotional landscape, I think it's allowed me to create more space to feel it all, as you said, Henry, to not reject these really tough emotions that are cycling through, to make my way through the darkness. And then, because we've worked with these elements, or because, I've worked through these elements, they allow some light to enter, and sort of a ladder to make my way out of. And then I can take a simple action like sending an email and saying, oh God, I am like not having it. I am not doing okay. We need to do something. So, it was able to prime me into action, which I'm really grateful for. When you start to kind of cultivate these positive inner states, they just feel like ladders out of darkness for me. And they give me that next step of action, even if it's small. Then as a team, we decided we need to say a little bit more, or take some additional action, which is, we also opened up, we have this amazing Resilient Kids Summit that's full of all these brilliant pediatric and adolescent mental health experts and integrative mental health experts. And we decided to make it free. So folks, go over there at Natural Mental Health, and you can access that now for free. That was that simple solution that our team came up with. And it felt really good. And that simple solution feels like it's going to fuel more action. So that's my long story.
Well, I actually loved what you wrote. I loved how you wanted to respond. I thought it was just right on, and I think I'm wanting to talk about it because I think it's such a nice example of how to respond to something like this in a way that feels really authentic, really genuine, that does something, even though none of us, no single one of us, has the ability to fix this problem or any of the big problems facing us. We cannot hold ourselves to that standard that that we think we have to have, a really big solution, or else we do nothing. Because each one of us, if we could respond in a heartful way like that, with what is within the possibility for us to do collectively, things would really start to change. There would be a very big difference because we each have different skill sets. We each have different ways of responding within our universe, small as it might be. Doing something with that, taking some kind of action is really, really worthwhile. And I think it's worth saying that sometimes in the mindfulness world or the Buddhist psychology world or what have you, there is this notion that we're navel gazing or turning inward, or that it's all about acceptance. And it is about acceptance, but acceptance does not mean that we don't take action. Acceptance in this case might mean that you acknowledge that you actually have really, really strong feelings about this. And those feelings can move us. And, when we are moved, to me, that means we are mobilized in some way. It's creating some energy that we can do something with, that is maybe calling for us to do something with. And that means taking some kind of action.
Yep.
But, action that you can take that's within your purview of your world to do. And I think that this is also such a good reminder that we collectively, we have the tendency to kind of stay in our heads, to stay with our thoughts and our minds and not go beyond that, really. And when we have a visceral reaction to something like this with these emotions that are strong and genuine, it's a very different part of us that can call upon some very different sets of responses. And so, there is a difference between the head and the heart, between the mind or our thoughts and our emotions. And, we have both of them. There's more to us than that too. But this is a time to really embrace the heartful side of ourselves, to let those feelings that are uncomfortable and unpleasant really be there, and create some sort of movement or response, some sort of action on our part.
Yeah. just sort of taking it out of the mind. I think, Henry, thank you for sharing like maybe a graceful action that I took. But let me tell you, like before what I did, because I was so angry. And, I think without that awareness of anger, it can really fuel some not so great next steps. So in our backyard, we're gardening folks, and we got this huge pile behind the shed of compost, literally a pile of shit. And it just like drew me in. Like that's how I was feeling. It was all clumps of junk. And so I grabbed a giant shovel and I went back there and I just like pounded all these clumps out. And I was like making a racket back there. I was kind of yelling at it and like throwing the shovel. I was concerned my neighbors were going to have like a welfare check that I was like, I had buried a body back there or something, because I was mad. And it was just a wonderful way to work through that emotion, because I couldn't bury that anger. And I had, in the past, that's absolutely what I would have done, because I hadn't sort of navigated that space very well, or identified coping skills or strategies. For me, it's like physical energy. I need to burn some of that anger off. So I went out there, I burned the crap out of it. And then I came back, I was like, okay, take a shower. You seriously smell. and then I sent that email. So it was messy at the beginning. Which is fine, right? It's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to be sort of in that muck for a bit. And I kind of use that shovel to get my way out.
That is a very literal way of dealing with those emotions. I love it.
I am a literal person. Yeah.
Well, I think that this does give us an opportunity to experience and face and kind of wrestle with these really difficult emotions, and to remember that these feelings, strong as they can be, that, as Rilke put it, no feeling is final.
Yeah.
No feeling is final. And to me, I love that, because it reminds us that these dark or heavy feelings, they don't last. They are not permanent, no matter how strong they might be, especially when something is generated in response to something like this. I mean, that's probably how we are meant to feel for a while. Don't have to live there, but the feeling is there, and it's probably there for a reason. And allowing us to really have it can result in something very positive to come out of it. But the feeling itself is not final. It can turn into something else. And I think that, this is maybe going to sound a little bit overly optimistic or even airy-fairy, but I think that ultimately what this can draw us to is a response of love, because those feelings of anger, fear, sadness, when we allow ourselves to have them, they can draw us into something like compassion or caring for another, or wanting to do something to change this. And, that's a loving response to something that is otherwise really horrific. And I think that's really what we mean about joy sitting right beside these other really difficult things. They're not mutually exclusive. And, like you said earlier, Aimee, it does not mean that you always have to feel good or happy or positive. That joy isn't just that. It's something much, much deeper, in my view. And all these elements we talk about, that can keep moving us in that direction of joy. I mean, they're all there right beside these other really, really difficult and challenging things. And like we've said before, where do we put our focus, our energy? What do we want to really look upon and grow in our awareness? And it's not denial. We don't want to deny that this stuff is happening, but we also don't want that to have the final word.
Yeah. Joy is kind of messy.
It can be messy, for sure.
Well, I think maybe with that note, actually ending with a quote from Pema Chodron and then encouraging folks to join us for the next episode where we kind of get into a few more sort of strategies, I think, that really link up to what we just kind of swam through, that we just kind of explored the space of. So here's the quote. We think that the point is to pass the test or overcome the problem. But the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. Then they come together again and fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, for relief, for misery, for joy.
Thank you for listening to the Joy Lab podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, visit joylab.coach to subscribe for your monthly infusion of joy and to learn more about the full Joy Lab program. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.